Lunar Sway follows Cliff, a young man drifting through life in a small town in the American desert wilderness. His life is upended by the appearance of a woman claiming to be his birth mother, who brings trouble in her wake. Lunar Sway feels like an introduction to art house indie cinema, as it gently weaves a little weirdness into its narrative and only rarely becomes truly bizarre. The draw of the film is its characters. They're fun, quirky, and you'll enjoy spending time with them. Despite the film's dreamlike style, it doesn't feel artsy for the sake of it or overindulgent. While the film does get a bit weird, it never tests the audience's patience with its more abstract elements. Therefore, Lunar Sway is worth a watch. And now, with Lunar Sway fresh in our heads, it's time for a chat with the filmmaker behind the movie, Nick Butler. Well, hello to you, Nick, and thank you very much for coming on the Really Good Films podcast to discuss your film, Lunar Sway. It's really nice to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
So I think the first thing I'd love to ask you is what inspired you to create Lunar Sway?
Yeah, well, it had the kind of concept in mind for a really long time, but this thing that has happened to me before with short films kind of happened where I had this image in my head of the movie. I could picture the trailer, but it wasn't a movie I was very inspired to tell. It was a very different version, a little more naturalistic and grounded. And then a couple years ago, I was in an unrequited love situation, and this premise kept sort of coming back to me, but I pictured a much more stylized version, which is the one we ended up making. And once I started daydreaming that version, I got really excited and inspired to make it. So that's kind of how it came about.
Now, it's amazing how a sort of a change in approach really ignites your passion for a project again.
Totally. Yeah. The original version was always like, oh, that's an idea for a movie someone can make, but not me. But then when I kind of reimagined it, started from scratch, imagined it in a different setting, it all just kind of came to life from there. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. So, of course, when coming up with the idea for Lunar Sway, sort of what came first? Was it the location, the characters, the story itself?
Right. So the original idea was the basic premise of what if someone's birth mother came out of the woodwork, reconnected as adults, but she had some secrets. But what really got me excited and inspired to really make this version was the setting and the location and the kind of aesthetics and tone of it. It has a very specific vibe. It's set in a weird, fringy desert town, and something about that setting really made the whole premise kind of make sense to me. I could just picture these characters living in this kind of fringy town, and that just inspired who these characters are in the world and the aesthetics. And I actually started collecting images at the same time as starting to write it. So I think the landscape in the world really influenced everything about the story.
Oh, fantastic. So sort of the world, the location sort of was the major sort of jumping off point, as it were.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
So eccentric characters are an important part of Lunar Sway. How do you create your characters? Were they based on real people you've met, or were they sort of combinations of traits, sort of people stitched together, Frankenstein style?
Yeah, they're pretty Frankenstein. I think usually characters exist somewhere on that range between drawing from someone very specific that you have in mind to someone completely fictional that the story kind of necessitates, and most of them are somewhere in the middle. So I find usually the characters are kind of an amalgamation of lots of people, and some version of yourself. Like, I hate to admit it with this movie, but I think you're always writing about yourself, whether you realize it or not. So even if you take, your most insecure feelings and personify it as a very dysfunctional character or something, I think even without realizing it, we're often writing about ourselves and people we know. But I'm almost never thinking specifically about someone I know. Sometimes I'll meet someone in the wild after starting to write a character who will remind me of a character, and I'll start noticing some of their turns of phrase or expressions they use or something and work that into a script. So sometimes inspiration comes kind of after you start writing the character, but but it's usually a combination of, I think, everyone you've met.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose that's you have a very good eye for people given your sort of extensive casting experience. I was wondering if that sort of impacted how you cast the actors in this particular film, and obviously whether that sort of developed over time and impacted how you developed characters as well as the film went on.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work in casting. That's sort of my day job. And I think that's sort of one of my favorite parts of the whole process. And in this case, definitely, I think having worked in casting helped me a lot. I learned a lot of lessons. I think it taught me how to watch auditions. I think some filmmakers, especially when they're starting out, are looking for almost like the final version of the movie. Whereas I think it's really important to just kind of give the actors the benefit of the doubt that they'll get to the final version eventually. That starts when you really are working on the project at this stage, you're just looking for the essence and something like the kind of spark of who the character is. So I think yeah, working in casting really taught me how to watch auditions, and I think that's maybe the most valuable lesson I brought from that world.
Now, that's really interesting, not looking for the final product. I think that most people outside with no experience of that would think, oh, the person walks in and immediately it's snap, the character falls into place. But coax that out of someone
Sometimes,
as a director must
yeah,
be quite
sometimes
rewarding.
yeah, and I find some directors just will sort of be unimpressed with a really good audition because it isn't quite the final version, and it's like, no, you have to be open minded because the actor's going to keep working on it, it's going to transform. And in fact, the opposite can also be true. Sometimes directors get really excited about a tape, but it's like that's not going to be the exact performance you get on set. It's going to evolve, and it should evolve. So it's not really about that. You're kind of looking for who really captures the essence of the characters. And when it's something I've written, it's easier. It almost feels like cheating because I can just sort of like recognize the character right away. But when you're casting for someone else, it's more challenging because you're always looking for what their vision of the movie is, trying to get inside the director's head. It might be something very different than what you're drawn to, but it's ultimately about trying to like, capture what their intent and vision for the movie is. So when it's my own, it feels a lot easier in a way, but it's definitely fun. Although that being said, Liza Wiles' audition for Lunar Sway was basically like you could have spliced that right into the movie. It was pretty much like a finished scene. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, she has such charisma, and it's immediately evident, in person and on screen. I mean, maybe we can sort of chat about Liza now, in terms of the project, and talk about. Obviously, many people will know Liza for her role in The Gilmore Girls and its revival, and How to Get Away with Murder, amongst many others. How did she get involved in the project, and what was she like to work with?
Oh, she was a joy to work with. We're still really close friends to this day. We text and chat all the time. We're all kind of traveling together now that we're starting to do festivals. So it's really fun to be able to kind of spend quality time together. But we've all stayed in touch. And every time Liza's in New York, we, hit up a diner and wander around a little bit. And she's amazing. Yeah, she was really committed and passionate about the project. She has been a real champion for the movie since day one. And she watched various cuts of it, and we would get into these kind of in-depth conversations about editing choices and all that. And so she's been such a support system and amazing to work with. And I think she really embrace the opportunity to go back to kind of an indie movie where it's really just everyone's collaborating, and it's so different from the world she's used to, which is obviously very high profile and big budget. But she was so willing and so game to just kind of do that. So that was a real help because there's the lead actors really set the tone on set often and can really influence the whole mood on set. So when the lead actors are that positive and bring such a positive energy, it just helps the whole process. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's that really came across well, not in the film, but in the Q&A as well, at BFI Flair. Sort of very eager to sort of answer questions and sort of help everything go very smoothly. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So, relationships in the film often have a sort of transactional nature. Is that a side of human relationships that particularly interests you as a filmmaker?
Yeah, it seems that way. It definitely seems to be something I keep turning back to. And I think in general, people like to write about transactional relationships because I think that's where a lot of drama and conflict and secrets kind of live. But yeah, it's definitely something I like to push and play with because in this film, it's like they're our characters who are literally con artists and literally lying and pretending to be someone they're not. I think that that's just kind of a heightened metaphor for how we all feel in all of our relationships. We never really know who to trust and to what extent all of our intimate relationships are kind of some sort of agreement or a contract. Not even in a sinister way, but we all have we get something out of every relationship. So if you look at us from a certain lens, you could think of it as like we all have all our ulterior motives. And that's a very unsettling and kind of cynical way to maybe think of our closest friendships and romantic relationships. But it's fun to explore that in the safety of fiction where you can kind of do that thought experiment. So I definitely find myself returning to that theme, and it definitely makes for interesting dynamics to write about, if nothing else.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting, as you say, sort of to explore that in a fictional context, because I think that it is true that there is obviously a transactional part to all relationships, but yeah, to be able to play around with that a little bit, yeah, really does push interesting dynamics and make the interactions between the characters all the more interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think there is like a lot of opportunity to, yeah, explore different gray areas in relationships, when you kind of look at ones that are a bit more transactional. Because like even with Cliff and Marg, where there's a lot of dishonesty, a lot of people using each other, there's also I think a baseline of a very genuine connection below it all. So it's kind of fun to look at the ways in which it can be both at the same time.
Absolutely, the sort of, yes, you said, the genuine connection and the
Yeah.
transactional side not being mutually exclusive, really
Exactly.
sort of
Exactly.
blend.
That's right.
So, Cliff obviously becomes intimate with several people during the film. Was it always the intention, for lack of him defining himself, for him to be a bisexual?
Yeah, I mean, I think like early on, I would say I just knew I would want this character to have the opportunity to have romantic relationships with a wide range of different characters because that's just so part and parcel with who he is. He's giving himself away a little too easily. It's really a movie about looking for connection and intimacy in all its forms. So it started off as like, well, I don't want it to be all male characters, so let's have him be fluid or whatever. But then the more I wrote it, the more it became intriguing and rewarding to just write a bisexual character. And it's funny because we've been getting a lot of feedback, especially at a BFI Flair, from people who just commented how uncommon by representation really is. And we weren't on any kind of big mission, but it was something that came up even in the writing process, getting feedback that it's sort of yeah, brought to light just to be how uncommon that it really is to have a protagonist who's bisexual. So that kind of became an exciting part of the project for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's sort of an sort of exciting thing that you'd stumbled upon a niche that wasn't sort of fully explored properly, and that you were able. That was sort of something that elevated in many people's eyes the film itself. So Lunar Sway seems to focus on Cliff's journey through life rather than a sort of specific destination. Do you think it's important to have stories that that don't go in search of sort of a specific fixed ending?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I'm a big fan of movies that play around with the structure if that's what the story calls for. You know, it's really just about telling the story in the most honest way possible. And because this is a character who's very, you know, young and probably even young for his age, where he's really searching and kind of meandering and going on a soul searching journey. So I really wanted the story to feel like we're following him through a variety of different paths, and you never know quite what's around the next corner. And I think for me personally, as an audience member, I can sometimes get very frustrated when I feel a very tightly structured movie where every little thing is introduced and pays off in a very conventional way. Sometimes that is the best way to tell a certain story or the most appropriate way to tell a story. But sometimes I can find it very limiting and frustrating. And I think in our movie, I like to think you know, a lot of the plot points pay off in a very direct way, but sometimes it pays off in a more abstract way or leaves things unanswered or unresolved in a way that more accurately captures Cliff's own journey and experience. He doesn't get all the answers he wants by the end of the movie. He doesn't really know what happened to some of the people he met along the way. And, you know, you could always shoehorn in more resolution, but I felt in this particular story very dishonest because a lot of it is about him letting go of needing to have those answers and to just kind of make peace with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's nice to have that because it's quite an accurate reflection of life to have sort of this no sort of fixed ending because no one knows
Yeah.
ultimately where things will progress and where people will end up. So to have that flexibility, especially with storytelling, is really unique and really makes it stand out. I think also you have that sort of that element of episodic nature that we don't think of our lives as a sort of an overflowing sort of narrative all the time, and you'll just have sort of little episodes. And I think that was really nice, sort of, to have parts of the film, such as the therapy sessions, which obviously were part of the overflowing narrative, but you could sort of dip in and out of episodes of Cliff's life and his interactions as they're both individual and as a wider in the wider arc.
Yeah, that's very much the idea. And I think with some, yeah, it is very episodic and it's sort of this character stumbling through different experiences. And I do think that if you want to find the through lines, there's connections between all the different ingredients and it sort of stitches together. But we did want it to feel a bit episodic and kind of, yeah, like a meandering journey in a way.
Mm. Well, I think that speaks to your skill as a filmmaker, that you're able to play around and be episodic, but yet it still feel like a cohesive narrative.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, some people would disagree with that, I'm sure, but that was the goal.
Yeah, no, I think that worked out very well.
Thank you.
Um, so, obviously, there's plenty of humor in Lunar Sway,
Mhm.
with some very nice, dry, witty dialogue. was this sort of fully fleshed out in the original script, or were actors able to sort of play around with the dialogue, go off book, sort of, yeah, play around a little bit?
It's pretty fixed. I'm very anti-improv, actually. I'm pretty strict with the dialogue specifically. But that being said, I mean, obviously the actors bring a lot to the scenes anyway, and particularly this cast. Like everyone's so strong. Our lead actor Noah Parker is just such a talented, exceptional actor. Liza, we talked about Grace Glowicki. I mean, Grace is an amazing writer too. So it's like she brings like a real holistic approach to storytelling to her characters. But that being said, I kind of think that the dialogue being fixed gives the actors the boundaries they need to do their job, because it's almost like, okay, they have this information that isn't flexible. So what do you do with that? And then it's like, it almost helps, in my opinion, it helps the actors. It's obviously case by case. Like some films lend themselves to improv, I guess, and some directors love working that way. Not me. It gives me anxiety because I feel like you have to put in all the work before you get to set. Obviously, if something magical happens on the day or something changes, or certainly if an actor wants to kind of reword something so it flows a little easier, obviously that's different. But in terms of in general, if you read the screenplay, the dialogue doesn't change much. But I actually think that gives the characters, or sorry, the actors, the info they need to really bring their own twist to the characters. And all these actors brought so much to it, and kind of, gave me permission to be quite hands off as a director in many ways, because they all just kind of knew what they were doing. So there's no, made my life easy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that maybe it's the naturalistic nature and the sort of the ability for people to bounce off each other, which gives the feeling of improvisation within the sort of fixed structure of the script. So it's
Yeah.
to a positive reflection
Yeah,
on
we've
that.
gotten that question from a few people, and I love that, because if it does feel naturalistic and improvised, I mean, that just means the actors are so talented. Because yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, they're doing well. Absolutely. So yeah, no, I mean, this was a thing, I think, especially with the therapist Neil, and the sort
hmm
of battle, shall we say, of control between him and Cliff over the course of the film was something that particularly sort of stood out. That so it was very very playful. Um, was that sort of always sort of part of the film, or sort of did that sort of develop as it went through?
yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to shout out Andy Yu, the actor who plays the therapist, who's so funny, and he's just like a master of sort of dry, deadpan comedic delivery. So yeah, he was really fun to work with, and Noah also can just like butt heads with him so well. But yeah, I think for me, I always viewed it as a dark comedy. I viewed it sort of as like, I kind of, when I started writing, I almost pictured it as like a big expansive desert with like little bursts of humor. So it's not like we're reaching for the jokes every chance we get, but there is a lot of humor in it. And I think that stems just from the main character, Cliff, feeling like a bit of an outsider, stumbling through life. And there's a bit of absurdity and humor to that, because he's sort of just like always the butt of the joke in some ways. And so to me, it always made sense to tell the story with a filter of dark humor.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's really great, and he's willing to sort of he's defensive, but he's also willing to sort of
Yeah.
self-deprecate. You know, if you talk
Yeah.
about sort of him admitting to taking sort of hair pills and
Yeah.
that sort of side of, I'm vain and it has consequences, but I own that, as it were.
Exactly.
So obviously the film's setting is particularly unique. What was the process behind designing the film's world as a whole, sort of throughout sort of
Yeah.
cinematography, set dressing, all that sort of?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very visually aesthetic movie, like very deliberately planned. We're not just kind of capturing the world as it is. Everything is very stylized. So yeah, we worked a lot with our whole production designer and art department team in the weeks leading up to the shoot. They were there a couple weeks before everyone else, and we, yeah, just sort of picked all the wallpaper samples, figured out every little detail far in advance. It's all about making the movie in prep. And same with the cinematographer, Dimitri Lopatin. This is our second movie together. And I think he came and we spent 3 weeks in BC doing prep and just sort of working through all the details and making sure, visiting a lot of the locations in person and just making sure we were very prepared. So I think with a movie this specifically stylized, it's just about doing it in prep. You can't leave as much to chance, and just having a very clear image that you're all on the same page before you get to set. And then obviously things change on the day. But yeah, and our costume designer, Chelsea, I would say too, Chelsea put a lot of intentionality behind every little detail in the wardrobe. And that we started talking, before I even had funding for the movie, we were on the phone just brainstorming ideas. And so it's all about getting the work done early, starting early.
Yeah, no, I think there's some really sort of fun choices that are more obvious and more subtle ones as well. especially the outfits once Cliff and Marg go off on their adventure, as it
Yeah.
were. There's
Yeah.
some really sort of fun personas, shall we say, that they adopt. Um, so, were there any? Well, obviously, with creating something that is so intentional and everything having to be set up, were there any challenges when creating the film's environment in British Columbia? Yeah, anything in particular that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, well, we shot in a beautiful region of British Columbia that's kind of the desert of Canada, which a lot of people don't realize there even is a desert in Canada. And it's a gorgeous place to shoot because one, the natural landscapes are stunning, but it also is a place that has a lot of genuinely old buildings and hotels and motels, which is surprisingly more and more uncommon to find. Like I've location scouted for my share of weird vibey motels on a couple projects, and they can be hard to find because everything's newly renovated. So this was a part of the country where we could find these kind of old classic houses and locations that hadn't been renovated. So that made our life a lot easier. And so, yeah, it was just a great place to shoot and just find these very richly atmospheric locations. There was no shortage of them. So that was fun. In terms of challenges, I mean, honestly, that region is known for forest fires, and there was like a raging forest fire all summer leading up to our shoot in that region that could have threatened the whole thing. But luck was on our everyone's side because they really were able to contain that fire pretty early and pretty well. And then by the time we got there to shoot, everything was cleared up, and we didn't have to because we had no backup plan. If we had to relocate, there would have been no way to shoot the movie. So yeah, that's kind of the big struggle with that region of the country is that, Mother Nature and yeah.
Well, that was a bit of a relief, wasn't it? My
Oh
goodness,
yeah.
that's yeah.
Huge
so,
relief.
so many of your locations then were sort of pre-existing. You didn't have to construct too much.
No, we didn't have to construct much. They were all existing locations. I got to BC in June and basically location scouted through September, which is a really fun process that I love. Like I just literally go door to door and knock on people's doors and ask if I can get a tour of their house. And sometimes they get suspicious about halfway through me filming their bedroom or something. They'll be like, "Wait, do you have ID?" Or making sure I'm not scoping the joint to steal it or something. But yeah, and we had a lot of help from the local film commissioner. She was a huge asset and introduced me to a lot of towns that we ended up shooting in. But yeah, we did transform some of the interiors. Like the therapist office in particular actually was like a bright blue room when we found it. But we put up wallpaper, put up fake wood paneling, really transformed it. So but we don't have the budget to do that to every location. So a lot of the time we just have to find a location that already looks very close to what we need. So it's about putting a lot of time into the location scouting. And then our amazing art department will tweak it and have to be really creative and resourceful with our limited resources to just enhance it. So sometimes that's the best way to go is to just bring in a few details that elevate it. And then if there's a few locations that really need to get transformed, like that therapist's office, we pour in all the money because wallpaper is expensive and it may not seem like a big challenge, but it ends up costing a lot of money. So yeah, that's kind of how we do it.
Fantastic. Cliff's dreams and fantasies sort of give us some real surreal imagery. What was the intent of the surreal element of the film? I mean, you talked about earlier about it sort of sparking new life in the idea, but
Yeah.
is that something that sort of interests you?
Definitely. I mean, I think because this character lives in a world where he doesn't know what's real, what's fake, what to believe, what not, it made sense for me to kind of lean into the artificial aspects of the story. So whether that's making it stylized or going really into these sort of surreal or dreamlike sequences, it sort of felt part and parcel with the story. Also, because this character Cliff feels very alienated from the world around him. So I wanted to create that unsettling, like Twilight Zone-y kind of feel that just sort of matches what he's sort of feeling internally. And with the dream, that was a really fun sequence to shoot. A lot of practical, locations and mixed with a lot of CGI in post. And so it was just like a really fun collaboration between all the departments to create those more elaborate dream sequences.
Yeah, I mean that's quite interesting to see. You mentioned the Twilight Zone as sort of inspiration. Was there any other sort of film or television sort of pieces that really inspired you in that regard?
It's funny. I rarely think about specific references or inspiration when I'm writing. I kind of tend to think we study all of our favorite movies, and then when we go to write, it's all in a blender, and hopefully the lessons are there and they'll show up. But visually, we looked at a lot of still photography. I was really interested in there being a lot of reflections and kind of blurry images, so we looked at a lot of great still photography that did that well. And then about 6 months before the shoot, I discovered the movie Paris, Texas, which quickly became one of my favorite movies. But for those who've seen that, it's also set in beautiful deserty landscapes and kind of smaller towns on the fringe. And so that became a bit of a reference. I mean, our visual look was pretty baked in at that point, but we definitely drew some references from that as well. So I'd say that's probably the closest visual touchstone for us in terms of movies.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting to hear, obviously, because you hear the sort of the David Lynch comparison sort of drawn up a lot with the festival program and stuff. And well, it's easy to see. Obviously, you mentioned before that that wasn't sort of a primary thought in your head.
Well, it wasn't conscious, no, but it does come up a lot. A lot of the credit reviews have mentioned Lynch, and so I guess we just have to lean into it. But I understand the comparison because it is small town eccentric characters and some surreal dream logic. So, but it definitely wasn't conscious, and I would consider it almost sacrilegious to try to, uh, you know, emulate someone that singular and specific. So, definitely wasn't conscious.
No, absolutely no. It's very interesting. So, in terms of sort of surrealist imagery and obviously trying to attract people to see the film, making it accessible to a broader audience, was that sort of in your mind, not to sort of take the surreal imagery too far in fear of sort of making it more niche than it otherwise might have been?
I don't worry maybe enough as much as I should about alienating the audience. I guess that's my big problem is no, I rarely think that way. I kind of let it be as surreal as it needed to be. And the movie is quite niche, but I do think it's mainstream at the same time because it does have a con artist caper side to it. I think the characters are very universal, but it's definitely a movie that's offbeat, weird, quirky, and it's for people who embrace that kind of story. But no, I never gave any thought to making it more mainstream, and I think that shows in the movie.
I think you've balanced it really, really well.
Oh,
I think
thank
you've actually
you, thank you.
struck that well. I think that there's a really good balance. I think I sort of say it's sort of an introduction to a sort of art house, sort of independent cinema, and I think that sort of reflects in the fact that someone who maybe put off by more extreme surreal films could find your film and rather enjoy it.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's actually a really good way of articulating, I think, our goal, because it's like I do want to make movies that are, they're not super conventional necessarily, but they are hopefully still very entertaining. We try to make it, there's a lot of plot twists, there's a lot of humor, a lot of visuals. So it's not like we're not making something that's so out there that it's going to alienate, everybody in the audience for sure. So yeah, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's worked really well. So, pardon me. Let's have a look. Of course, another important question, obviously, is the future of the film itself and when and where people can see it. Now, I've obviously seen the press that TLA releasing is taking it in the US and the UK with a full date. Do we have any sort of further details on that?
We don't have the exact dates yet because it's still a ways off, but it'll be sometime in the fall. So I think we're going to a theater in London in October, and I think the US release will probably be around then. But we're just kind of doing the festival circuit before the release, and we want to take our time with that. So between now and the fall, we're going to go to as many festivals as possible, and then once we know our full festival schedule release, we'll lock those dates for the theatrical release in North America and in the UK specifically. But definitely sometime in the fall. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it was great to hear that you sort of secured that, and obviously the French language distributor as well, Optimal Distribution as well.
And we just landed a German one as well, and now we're in final talks with a Canadian one. So we're doing the rounds. We're trying to get it out there as many places as we can.
Amazing, the ball's really rolling. I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously with an October date, you've also got the BFI London Film Festival as well.
Right. Good point. Good point.
So if that's I'm sure that we've had the repeat. Oh, I'm there. Sorry. The camera's.
I love London. BFI Flavor was actually my first time going to London. Noah as well, our lead actor, and I love London. So I hope we get a chance to go back and do some Q&As.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the amazing thing. I mean, I don't think that's the first time that an LGBT film has repeated as well. I mean, I know that Four Mothers, I think was originally at Flare, and then when originally at the London Film Festival, and went to Flare the following year.
Oh, okay.
So I think there is the precedent there for your
I
film.
mean, fingers crossed. That'd be great.
And I suppose a final question is obviously your future and any upcoming projects you might be working on at the moment that we should know about, we should be excited about.
Well, I'm writing a new one now that I'm very excited about. Hopefully, you should be too, but we'll see. It's still a work in progress, but it's a bit of a excuse me, it's a bit of a suspenseful thriller. And yeah, I'm still in the midst of working on it. I'm about to go on a little vacation to do some writing in a small desert town in New Mexico, actually very Lunar Sway adjacent, and hopefully finish the screenplay very soon. So yeah, that'll be next.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Whatever. I'm assuming you don't have a title for it yet, so we'll.
No, no, not yet.
Well, I think that's anything else you wanted to talk about as far as the film's concerned.
No, just you can go to cloudypicturesinc.com for any upcoming festival screenings in your area, as well as any release info. We'll just keep updating that website, so feel free to check in if you to see where we're screening.
There you go. Check it out.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very kind of Nick to spare the time to appear on the podcast. I'm sure you're now even more eager to see Lunar Sway.